Now that is one really cool score, Kenneth. All right, here we are. It's a Saturday morning here in Wellington, New Zealand. Beginning of September, mid-September. That's the beginning of spring for us down here. It's a lovely day out there. I might get a chance to go walk around a little bit and enjoy the air and so on. But for right now, I'm feeling a little better with my health, and I have been itching to get back to these evaluations, and I have a little bit more commentary about that in the collection, the sort of collection of website evaluations under the letter M that I released this last weekend, and also in Hervé's evaluation, which was just preceding this one. So if you want to hear more about it, just go check that out. I won't go into huge detail now, except just to say that I'm really glad to be back at this, and thank you, Kenneth, so much for your patience and for putting up with my delays due to health. And I'm feeling like I could possibly maybe finish these evaluations by the end of the year. And sort of not let things go on for too much. People will be, of course, asking, am I going to do other evaluations or challenges in the future? I'm not sure, but I'm not ruling it out. Okay, I have to just sort of see where my health is at. Just organizing them, and it's a lot of effort, even just to get all the scores together and so on. So it might come back in a limited way at first, and then increase as my health gets better, or maybe it'll have to be on hold for a while longer. So just please bear with me while I get everything together. But at the very least, I want to get right back into these wonderful scores that I was sent a couple of years ago. And it's actually just about exactly 2 years since I came down with long COVID. It was sort of the beginning of September of 2023 when I started into this period, which I still am. I'm not out of the woods, but I appear to, the treatments that I'm going through right now appear to be working better than others in the past. So let's just cross our fingers. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's just jump straight into this. I thought that this was a very fun score, Kenneth. I think there are a few things that you could possibly be doing a little, making it a little easier on yourself and your players, and just some things that I think you could definitely work on a little bit more in terms of like balance and smoothness and so on. One thing that I would say, just kind of observation, is that you really avoid scoring that many slurs on anything. Do you know what I mean? Like you just go and take a look at any score. Usually you'll see a lot of slurs, and just, some of them are indicating how many notes are under a bow by your string players, and how many notes are under a breath by your wind players, and so on. And there seems to be a lot of a real lack of that, and I think that I can give you some guidance. Now, I hope that you have gone and watched some of the other evaluations of the Patreon participants up to now, and also the website subscribers. So a lot of what I might say in this will reflect what I've said before, but I'll try to keep it brief because I really go into much more detail in those other evaluations. So it's just better, if you really want to low down on the whys and the wherefores, that's where to get it. Okay. So my first question in my evaluation criteria is, does this intro set the mood effectively? Okay. And here you sort of choose to take the approach of Beethoven's wind band kind of thing. He loved these little folk wind bands that were at this one tavern. Probably would be like a sextet or an octet of players, very simple. Maybe one or two bassoons, a couple of horn players, and a couple of clarinet players, and maybe a flute and an oboe, or maybe two oboes. So just really simple scoring, and they would play this. They would play little folk melodies and ditties and so on, and that works into his symphonies. It was one of his destinations on his long walks around Vienna would be this little tavern where these folk musicians played, and I think it was probably because it was a place where working people hung out and nobody would bother him and say, "Oh, you're the great Beethoven. I need to talk to you about about culture and art and get your opinion on everything and be your best friend," and just the typical kind of star worship sort of thing. It was very, very much it made him really uncomfortable. So here I would say at the beginning, like, you have really sparsely scored this in terms of slurs. You just have a couple of slurs over this melodic part. I think that you could probably take like a shorter slurs, but just really try to connect things more legato. Do you know what I mean? Because this is a very singing type of thing. Adagio cantabile, right? We're singing here. Da da. You know what I mean? Like, maybe slur this bar and then slur these two notes. Da da. And this could all go over one slur. And then I like the idea of going ta, but maybe slur into the next one because the other notes, continue to hold. And then here, you do not fall into the trap of letting go of the of this little tonic note right here, or it's actually, hang on a second, yeah, da, yeah. So you didn't let go of that sounding F. So yeah, I mean, yeah, just think everything could be a lot smoother in this. But other than that, I think you set the mood very beautifully in a very Beethoven kind of a way. Now the next issue is melody starting with elegance. Is there a natural flow to the transcription of the left-hand part? Well, let's see. Once again, the way you scored it, it's going to sound like this: da, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. So, I mean, if you really want that, I mean, it's not really choppy because the players might play it in a more connected style, but I mean, come on, like, what if you went, da, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, what if you had a nice, beautiful, natural flow to the bowing? And then maybe, like for these repeated notes here in the second violin, what if it were a portato, so just like a tenuto marks over these repeated notes with a slur over it. So the second violins would take the whole thing in a one up bow, kind of like a right, which would kind of make it fit in with the flow without being so choppy, right? I mean, it's not really choppy, and then the same thing here, this for the bassoon, I would say, I mean, and I think it's great that you have just a single bassoon. I've been seeing a lot of a duet that's a little unnecessary in some other parts, and the way that this fits in with the little cello figuration, right? I think is nicely done. But here, I think you could maybe do like a slur on each bar. Might be good. It's a little hard to slur down, but it's still possible. And then slurring across this, and then slurring across there. I think that would be good. Or you can even just do one big slur across this whole thing, and then it would make everything flow. Right? We want a natural flow to the accompaniment part down here. This is all very nice. Double bass, and then this da 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 da. I think that all works really nicely. Okay. And then, does this expand without clogging up? I think so. In fact, it doesn't really, you pretty much stick to the piano part. Is there a natural transition to octaves? Yes, I think you do that very, very nicely, and I like the idea of taking the melody up an octave here. I think that works really great, and it helps this open up. My one point here would be that I feel you just need a way better mock-up kind of sound. The sound set that you're using just feels, it is of much lower quality than your ideas. I'll just put it that way. Okay, so I think Note Performer would sound a whole lot better. If it maybe this might be what is it called? Muse Score, I think. And if that is not compatible with Note Performer, then what can you do? But I understand that Muse Score is getting better sounds. But anyways, whatever it is, I think you just really need to up your game. And I used to really dismiss the significance of mock-ups in the past, and now I've really realized that having a good mock-up is really essential because you're dealing with so many people who have no idea how to read a score. They have no idea how to interpret a bad mock-up as being something that is going to be better. In their mind, things, like if your mock-up sounds cruddy, so is the final product is going to sound. They just have no idea. They have no way of distinguishing. And also, the more realistic that things sound, that you're close to, you can't really obviously make it very realistic without spending a huge amount of time, which you probably don't have. But the more realistic you can make it sound, then the better it can guide their ideas. Like, say, if you're working with a choreographer or with a filmmaker or somebody like that, then before the final recording is made, they can know how to guide the editing of footage or the assignment of certain dance steps and so on. Do you see what I mean? So try to get something better. All right, so don't worry. I took a couple minutes of detour, but I'll make sure that you get enough time with this. All right, and here once again you have single instrument solos, And this fits in beautifully with my whole dictum here, my criteria of contrasting with the theme, contrasting between lines. Do you need harmonic support or not, and so on. So like you answer all those questions. You don't really need harmonic support. I don't know if you really need to have this second part, continuing on. It sort of, I feel like it takes away from the freedom of the first part. But if you feel it, if you think it sounds good in there, then you should do it. I would have the first bassoonist play the note along with the second bassoonist rather than have this rest. So, because you have to understand that, like, they're going da 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 da, right? So does that sound natural, or more like this? Ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da, and they will get a seamless unison with their second player. Don't worry, they're perfectly good at that. There's no need for this rest here. Okay, I just feel that it would flow better if you had the full 4 notes in the first part. But anyways, other than that, it's fine. My only question is, why did you leave out the leggermente? I mean, it makes perfect sense. Beethoven wanted it in there. Even if you're scoring it in a way that is obviously leggermente, you should still put it in, I feel. All right, now, we're going towards this next section, emphatic color of line, I ask. Harmonic density, setting up the next big tutti section. I feel that you do that pretty well. I think you could have gone divisi here with your cellos in order to get this B flat. I think that it's not just leaving it to the violas. I think that the whole slurring up to the B flat, that kind of it it's just, it really helps with the inevitability of the F major chord coming in there at the end, right? Now here, okay, you have a lot of ungas, and by that I mean like the articulation feel of a tenuto staccato is like putting your fingertip up against a bit of sticky tape and then pulling it off, right? So the pulling it off is the staccato, and the stickiness of the tape is the tenuto, right? So the effect is unga, 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 right? And do you really want to go unga, 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 just like, it's just too. What you really mean here is mezzo staccato, right? So it's better for you just to put, rather than have these as separate bow strokes, have these scored and in the wind parts as like slurring over, I would say, by beam group, right? So up down, up down, up down, up down. I think that works a whole lot better than like the just constant, and you'll get the same effect that you're aiming for without making it so fussy, right? Just how fast can you say unga, right? And then we'll show you right away that it's it's a kind of a non-starter. They'll just end up playing this tenuto staccato anyway. All right, so a couple of problems here in terms of range. I see you're kind of aiming for here. These piccolo notes are just like, you have a double problem here, right? You have first clarinet, I guess this is first clarinet, diving down here, will easily swallow these low pitches in here. If you want this, little contrary motion right in here, who should be playing that is another clarinet player, right? And it should be, whatever it is, it should be doubled by something going on in the strings. And then here, wouldn't it be better to have this, you already have the clarinet playing this, so you don't really need, you don't really need that to be doubled by the flute, right? If you want, by the time you get past this C, the flute will basically just disappear, especially as doubled by the strings. So it's just completely unneeded. You could have a duet clarinets here, and then that extra strength added to the violins would be something that would absorb rather than sounding kind of, like how a duet clarinets sound a little coarse, right? I think that that's what you're trying to avoid here. But, there's just really no need to push your flutes so low, right? I mean, look, I had a whole tip about this. Stop burying your flutes, right? Okay, so better to just like forget about the piccolo part here, and then just and then just have the I would say have your piccolo come in here, and then just cut all of this because nobody's going to hear this, right? The piccolo just basically will start disappearing below its C as it absorbs into the flute. So just have a duet flutes here on this top line, and then cut this lower thing and have a duet clarinets, right? And then have, when you get to this part right here where you have a little bit of contrary motion, then that's where you throw that into your first clarinet part, and then the second clarinet can just keep going downwards, right? And then they can join again. All right, and then here I'll do oboes. This is a huge amount of weight on this. Maybe there's some kind of harmonization you can do, or maybe you can go octaves here with the, or maybe what about what's going on in here? Does that get any love from any of your wind players? Any kind of support? So anyways, like these descending pitches here. This could have been done as octaves in clarinet. So I mean, there's a bunch of considerations in here that could firm this up a little bit better. But I know I'm kind of going on and on about it. And then this dun 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 is kind of nice. Some of this could have been supported a little bit by Divisi in the first and second violins. Kind of helps spreading it out without losing some of the color. Here I see you're trying to. I mean, in some ways you are scoring a little bit of, a little bit in the character of the period and a little bit not. I think you're not enough in the period to really justify having horns in C basso. I think you'd be better off with 4 horns in F, right? And then just scoring it all in F, because throwing in these Ds, and then there's some other pitches later and so on. They just they're stopped and half-stopped notes, and it's not really, I mean, some of these are pitches that would be better off in the C basso horns, right? They would naturally be, they would be available as natural pitches rather than stopped pitches. Do you see what I'm saying? But you didn't take the time to work that out. So I would say that just if you don't have to, then you don't need to, right? And then just stick with horns in modern horns in F, and you're going to be fine. All right, and then I like this. Okay, mezzo forte. I think your horns could also be like mezzo piano or mezzo forte. Okay, right in here, and then soft accents. See, so I was talking about watching out about using accents and softer, but just like it's putting an edge on it, right? So dun dun bum 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 dun dun. So my total approval here, and then this little clarinet part in here just kind of devilishly coming in under the radar. And then from here you keep things really simple, and it's something I like a lot. Bum 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 bum. So all right, so fresh new color, complementary timbre is something that I indicated in here. I really miss the trillo and the turn. Right? I think you could have put that in here. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, I miss that. And then just so long as you're aware that there's a real nakedness to this. I mean, you can hear it in the mock-up, so you can't have not been aware of it. So yeah, it just has a. I mean, it'll sound way better with real instruments, of course. Um, yeah, I mean, here's almost where I would want maybe tenuto staccato. You just sort of as opposed to point da point da. It just feels just a little shallow, without a little bit of padding. All right, and then same thing here. I would score this as mezzo staccato. So the difference in like mezzo staccato, portato, and so on. It's the articulation comes from the gut, right? So it's not so like when it comes from the tongue, it's very incisive, right? When it comes from the gut, it is pulsing, right? So that would definitely be something that I would put over that to keep it from kind of dominating so much in terms of its like the color. Even in a softer texture like this, it would have a tendency to distract from what you're trying to do here. Now, I love the idea of dovetailing and trading off, da 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 da. I think that it's cool to like alternate the colors in this. You could have also, of course, just done it like dovetailing between, your two flutes, going from one to the other and so on. And it's all good just so long as you don't push your oboe too high. And here you're not really going above a C and so on. The thing that you have to be aware of is that the difference in color between the two instruments is going to make like a seamless dovetailing, like not so likely. Do you know what I mean? Like the absolute difference in color means that the player or the audience is going to see it as two separate voices rather than as a voice that changes color. You see what I mean? So that's just something you have to accept. And I think that there was no need for you to have separate dynamics here. I think that the players know that they're going to match each other's dynamic, and it's just no need to. And then this all kind of makes its way down. I wonder why this is accented here. I mean, I think that you would be better off with smoother, with slurs, or with like once again with mezzo staccato, or even like slurred repeated notes, right? Which is it's like a semi portato, right? It's a slightly dragged sound, slightly pulsing sound, but not quite as intense or as obvious as a portato. The thing that the place where I feel that the accent is needed is the whole da 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 da, right? That's the da 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 da, and that's where I feel like with your horns you're missing an opportunity to go stopped open, right? Which is something that I did in my arrangement. But I mean, people don't have to imitate me. But and then like the way that the clarinets sort of drop out is also something that I here like here's a place where you could have emphasized that little half step kind of idea, right? So I think this could be rethought slightly. There's nothing wrong here, of course, with the horns and the cellos and everything else. I think that's all fine. Okay. And I like the way that the bassoons keep some motion, right? And then you jump up again, right, as you bring in the double basses, right? Just keeping in mind that as this harmony is moving out and spreading a little bit, and this is very much the same as Hervé's score, is that he also took the option of like expanding outwards. And then when he got to this big chord here, he lost a little bit of the element of surprise of just diving down and smacking that that low chord and then jumping back up again, right? So here you have taken the opportunity to throw in like, brass and so on. But here's like, I almost feel like horns. Like you only have like a bass trombone here. You don't have the rest of your trombones. You got your C trumpets. I almost feel like horns could have come in here and just really just kind of barked out, right? Those really aggressive chords there. Yeah, I mean, it's still really fun though, and I like the way that you didn't drop out. You kept things going, and this is kind of, Hervé, if you're watching this is kind of what I meant when I meant about like keeping the consistency of the low part going without having a big gap. And then it's fun, this fun little timpani stroke right in here. So I think this is all real fun. Yeah, and piccolo trill. I mean, I almost wish that like maybe your second flute player could do this without having the first under the second, right? And maybe you could have the piccolo and the second flute play it together in this trill, and then that would really help to toughen up this first violin trill here. I mean, it still works, but it's just the piccolo note's a little weak compared to the clarinet note, an octave low. Not sure how well the clarinet note really teams up so well with the tremolo in the second violins. I think you could have gone trill here too. If you're going to do it here, you could do it there, and you get this beautiful swirling effect. Maybe it's the violas and the cellos that need to be tremoloing on this G here. And once again, some of this could be mezzo staccato, or I don't know. You kind of don't need it. Like it's almost implied here as mezzo staccato though, with these tenuto staccato. This Yeah, don't want to get into it too much, but it's still a very cool idea. All right, so now. So now, my next concern here, after this big old chord, which is, that's nice. Nothing too big to analyze here. I like this nice high hanging C. It's very nice. There's no need for mezzo piano, versus piano. That's just totally unnecessary. Everything should be piano. The players know how to bring out the melody. Maybe your mock-up doesn't, right? But the players do. Trust them. All right. Okay, and this should absolutely be slurred. These notes that are sort of catching the, like they're providing a little bit of a harmonic pad behind the texture of the melody, right? So that's all very, very, it's a cool idea. So I would say, but just make it slurred. See, this part in here, I could almost see the strings being piano and the flutes being pianissimo, right? Just kind of adding a little bit of, because like this will pop out even at pianissimo, right? And provide everything you need. So why don't you try that? Go back to your file, piano in the strings, pianissimo in the flutes, and put a slur on this, and then have a listen to it. I totally approve of slurring to the beam group. I think that all works out really good, and it's a really nice complementary color. There's the strings working together with a little bit of flute sweetening. That's nice. And then contrasting timbre for the next phrase. You absolutely did it. And also contrasting with the accompaniment, going to winds. And you kept it really simple, the clarinets and then the bassoons underneath it and everything. And then just, I have another concern here of character and weight. You just add the strings to it. But look, there's no need for you to have different dynamic weights here. Maybe a little crescendo here because of the way you're thinking this up. Maybe everybody could be mezzo forte here. I don't think it would hurt a damn thing. And it's all just, you're all working together here. Bum, bum, bum. Sorry, it just takes a second for my computer to figure out what it's doing. Right, and then here you've got oboe unison with the first violin. So I bet you anything, as you were watching your score at the beginning of this video, that you noticed that you had left out the little chordal accompaniment, right? You absolutely need it. Here you throw in the chordal accompaniment under this this line here in your horns and so on. Here you could have done it in like you just did clarinets and bassoons, and like sort of you're using up everybody. But like, yeah, you could have done brass here, right, and then brass there, or you could have done like maybe horns and strings, right, just for a slightly different color, and then here like more heavy brass, right? Like if you really want to keep the colors different. But even just doing horns and strings and then just brass all by itself, right, that's also a contrast. All right. Really no problems. This is kind of the same thing in octave higher as before, just bigger and broader. Yeah, and once again, like you have so many different dynamic weights here. I almost feel like this could be piano. Da 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 da, and then a little crescendo here at the end. Da 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 da, and then just have everybody play mezzo forte, or maybe everybody play mezzo forte and just have the brass play mezzo piano if you really want to balance the weight a little. But the players would generally do that. I don't really worry about that too much unless it's like a real question of, I guess, from mezzo forte up, right? If it's mezzo forte crescendo or forte, fortissimo, whatever, I try to keep a little bit of a balance in the brass and so on. But I mean, certainly this is completely unnecessary. Mezzo piano and the melody, piano and the horns, and pianissimo and the players know how to balance. It's unnecessary. Okay, I would say mark everybody piano here. And yeah, this is a nice handoff here. You could have had the oboe come in here actually, for a little bit better clarity. Just because there's a trade-off here or a handoff here from first to second doesn't mean that the handoff has to be here between flute and oboe, right? You can make it a beat earlier. And yeah, this is nice because like you did the handoff right when the clarinet would be diving down into this quite naturally, and very simple for the player. Right, and then here you have the bassoon come in an octave lower, right? And that works so well. Just really keeping to the way that Beethoven scored it. Yeah, so I have no problem with any of this. I just have a problem with this getting left out. Maybe, you know what you could have done here is you could have had pizzicato. Right? That would have been another color you could have thrown in here if you really wanted to contrast each accompaniment quality of tone is a different thing. All right. So here we're getting into this, and I think tenuto staccato is fine. You could also have tenuto eighth notes to make it kind of shorter, rather than having the a slight lift, right? If you want to get rid of the lift, then just make it and that would be one way to do it. All right, so here we go. So this goes on for quite a bit, and it's like nothing that a bassoonist couldn't play. Maybe just like making it easier on them. I think that I had a trade-off in mind. I can't remember if it was like maybe on the G. But yeah, I need to go back and check out what I did. It's been years since I really looked at it. So yeah, and once again, this should all be piano. And I don't know if you really need, like, this once again, bassoon at piano, cellos at mezzo forte, crescendo to forte. I mean, why even have the bassoon there then, right? I think that you don't need to go. I don't think you need to do this. I think that the action is cooling down in general with everything, right? So there's no need to exactly imitate the way that the pianist is balancing their colors all the time, right? Their dynamic balance and so on. So here I think that everybody could have gone down to piano, but maybe just adding a few little nuances, like maybe some hairpins of little, maybe if everything was piano here, and then there's a little hairpin here, and then a little hairpin there, like diminuendo, right? And then ba da da bum bum bum, same comments as before as we get into the repeat. Okay, and then see here, like if you had just like not had this massive sound here I think that it would be great to go crescendo up to this D flat and then back diminuendo to piano. I think you're using it up. You're using up the surprise if you go crescendo to forte too early. And maybe not even a crescendo, just a crescendo from piano and then back down to the original piano. Okay, so so now we're getting to this next section. Okay, so does it seamlessly lead forward? I think it does, and I do really like the alternating pizzicato. I think that's really an original idea, and it's really fine. I think there are some things in here I'm not too crazy about, you know. But I mean, I'm not going to be picky about it. I think it more or less kind of sticks to some of what you did before. But there is one thing I think you really need to watch out about, all right? And then that is here in this sort of pizzicato section. Here you start to sort of play around with the harmony and make it something different than what's in the original score by Beethoven. And I think it stands out with so much, you know. It's like a sore thumb, right? It really, you can hear it a little bit too much, right? I just thought I'd warn you about that. So maybe if you made this more regular to the harmony of what is going on in, you know, it doesn't have to, you don't have to add so much, you know, so much harmonic motion and so on. It just like really distracts from this beautiful oboe melody. See, look, you got a trill in here. How come we missed those ornaments and trills before? Okay, all right. So this is something that is not the easiest thing for an oboe player to go. Is da 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 da. So this is easier. And you know what would be the easiest thing of all is just to have the whole bar slurred. Have them go da da da. You know what I mean? I just like it's a little easier. I mean, of course they can play this, but it's just not, you know, it's just, how effective is it? I just, you know, yeah. So my criteria here is like that this is a callback to bars 20 to 25. You know, is it chilly and restrained and yet tense? You know, is this little thing in here not too loud, not too buried, more emphasis on this? All these questions that I have. All right. Yeah, and then when you get to here, da da da, bum bum bum. This is where everybody really needs to be strong, and I feel that it's like having all this restraint here in the in the strings does you no good, because then like there's no contrast when it drops off back to piano again, right? And then here you keep the mezzo forte going, so we don't get the contrast of dynamic intensity between the two parts, right? So we don't go back to a mysterious kind of strange intellectual muddling, right? It's just da 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 da, right? You're keeping up the intensity here. What if you did this? Then right in here, mezzo piano instead of mezzo forte. Right? Leave it as it is. This is kind of fun, having the horns in octaves with the double basses. It's a really cool idea. And then everybody mezzo forte, or da 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 bum bum bum, and the strings going yeah da 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 da, and then suddenly piano subito, da 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 da, right? Da da da, ba da da, ba ba ba, da da da, ba ba ba. Now you're probably gonna mention in the comments, oh Thomas, I was gonna go back to piano, then I forgot to put it in. That's okay. That's all fine. And then here, I think here is where you could go. A mezzo staccato again. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. I would not score oboes over flutes like this, especially not in this context, because the quality of timbre from the oboe is going to distract from the flow of the violins. A. B. The overtones of the oboe are going to swallow up what this sort of medium range flute is doing. You might be better off just having this played, like this go to like two flutes, right? Or even this played by piccolo, where it's in a very soft range, right? Just like it's staying behind these swirling violins, right? You just really do not want to distract from this, right? And it's just, putting oboes over flutes like this when the flutes are in such a weak register, it's just watch out, my friend. Now this right in here, that's a third horn part, and it should be in F horns rather than C basso horns. Okay. So then bass trombone here. I mean, that's like, I don't have a problem with anything else then. I think it's all very, very fun. You'll hear my wife warming up. She's about to go to choir practice. Hopefully it won't distract us too much. All right, so, yeah. Okay, so mezzo forte continuing on. Ba, 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 da, da, da. Yeah, and once again, I feel like you're getting too warm too fast, right? What if you just kept it soft? I mean, it's like the whole point here is not the dynamic contrast and not getting beefy and not putting on the energy. Yeah, these whole 5 bars, the entire point of it is the harmonic and thematic interplay, right? Where the little bits and pieces, the little figuration, the little fragments pull us forward and pull us forward. So there's really no need to put on any kind of steam until like right here where you put this little crescendo maybe, or even later, right? Yeah, and then like, because I feel that by the time you get to here, you've sort of used up the audience's sense of anticipation, right? And then we have so many different mixtures of dynamics in here, All right, so look, let's be honest about this, okay? Players in the orchestra are used to thinking that everybody's dynamics are more or less the same, because usually that's the way they are scored, right? Okay, so if you have 2 players sitting near each other, and one player has got forte marked in their score, and the other one has got mezzo forte on their score, and the mezzo forte player hears the player next to them playing forte, they might think, wow, okay, so that's where our mezzo forte is going. It's going to be stronger than usual, okay, and wow, the strings are playing pretty strong, so I'm going to just play stronger, and then what's the whole point of marking the mezzo forte, right? By the same token, you might have these flute family players sitting here playing this forte and hearing the rest of the winds playing mezzo forte and thinking, wow, we are too loud. I guess everybody's just kind of trending in this kind of just a little bit more restraint. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, like unless there are really good reasons, and the players are not going to spend hours of time checking each other's parts to see who is mezzo piano, who's mezzo forte, and blah blah blah. That's the conductor's job. Is saying a little less horns here, a little more flutes there, blah blah blah. Everybody will remember it. Maybe they'll pencil it in, and then you should look at the parts after the concert, and then whatever's penciled in is you try to put into the parts for the next concert if you feel that they were a good judgment call. All right, but just assigning different dynamics to all these different parts. Really just try to have a general dynamic for everybody. And maybe when things get loud, if you're concerned about the balance, maybe take the brass down a little bit, or maybe just try to score so you don't have to do that. Okay? All right. Lecture over. All right. Yeah. All right. So here we're kind of, once again, I still feel like mezzo staccato is the way to go with this. And it's a really good thing to play against with this and so on. I feel that your harmonic support here is getting to be so huge that you really are starting to interfere with the flow of this. And then even when you start to flow downwards, you are distracting the listener by putting in this harmony up here, right? So just really watch out for that, like of pulling things in so many different directions that the focus of what Beethoven's intentions are not completely smashed apart, right? I think that really keeping things here, like the general flow of the music over those registers. Like for instance, like taking this way up to the higher. I mean, I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to keep from losing intensity here, so that you can go to like this really big, strong triple F thing, spread out across the whole orchestra and so on and so forth. But maybe it would be better to keep everything low. So like the highest note of anybody was playing was this middle C, and that would maybe limit your choices. And like that means that you don't need this, right? And you don't need this. You just need to really keep the focus on these lower parts, which means you don't even need you hardly need any oboe involvement at all, except for just kind of coming in here at the end to maybe play C, E, G, right? So yeah, so I just feel it's a little, that the accompaniment here gets a little too intense, but I do like the general, like piccolo, we're going to have the shine on top, but it's going to get more or less swallowed by the intensity of these fortissimo violins. Especially going into here, you'll sort of hear the D and the B and so on from the piccolo, but it'll quickly get swallowed up. Maybe it would be better just to double this at pitch with flutes, right? I mean, do you need this right in here? Or maybe this could be played by, first oboe, and that could be second oboe behind, right? And then this could be doubled by flutes, and you could have maybe more winds could be coming in to help out double this and so on, so that it isn't just so much a sudden inflation of the tone color, right? I just think the proportions need a little bit of work here. But I do like some of these, sort of da-da-da-da-da. I kind of like the kind of fanfare quality of the C trumpets here and so on, and the roll in the timpani. And yeah, I just think there are a lot of really good things, don't get me wrong. Beethoven indicates a slur over this, right? So shouldn't we possibly also, da, da, right? Wouldn't that be nice and smooth as we go back, ba, da, 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 and then you stopped. Probably didn't put that much thought into that, but just think we're just really relaxing, right? We're unclenching our fist here, right? Maybe things don't need to be triple F, right? Maybe everybody could just be fortissimo in the winds and strings, and maybe forte in the brass, but still fortissimo in the timpani. Right, and then really, the diminuendo should start back here so that you're relaxed and just go back to piano, right? Anyways, really diverting score. I really love this, and don't take my pickiness the wrong way. If you were perfect, you wouldn't need to show it to me, right? So that's the feedback that I've got. I think that there's a lot of very promising stuff in this, and it's just very, and I especially like the way you changed all the harmony here. Notice I just didn't make any comments about that. You can do whatever you like to and change things around, and whether it works or not, you might find yourself shaking your own head and thinking that's not happening. What did I do that for? Okay, fine. But the main thing is to try to kind of maintain a certain sense of Beethoven's intentions in terms of the natural exchange of ideas, right? That would be the only place where I put my foot down. It doesn't really, the contours, the harmonic sense, and all that stuff. It's all very flexible, but just the general shape of the proportions of things, the tensions and releases, the relaxation, I think those things are things we can learn from in trying to interpret in this new form. So anyway, but all that aside, great work, so enjoyable, and I'm glad that I'm getting a chance to look at some of these scores before I've got this one rush job that I have to do next week. And so I'm glad that I'm getting a chance to to get after some of this and get a little momentum going, so I can come back to it after I'm done. Somebody told me yesterday being Friday here by the calendar, on the other side of the international date line for most of my viewers. Somebody told me here Friday that they needed something on Monday, and I said, okay, well, fine. Send me, put me in touch with the person who is going to send me the advance, and I know that I'm not going to hear from them until Monday, and probably not going to get the advance until Tuesday. So that's a 6-day job, not a 10-day job, right? It's just one of those things, and I understand how the world works and so on, and it's totally fine. But all I'm thinking about in terms of this particular set of challenges is that, wow, that gives me just more time to see how much I can get after some of this and just really have a lot of fun with it before I have to do my real job. I don't know. I see it all as the same job and as one big thing, being orchestrating, at the professional level for different orchestras, and artists around the world, and then also providing orchestration, coaching, and perspectives and so on. I see it as part of just everything in the same basket. So I'm just so grateful that I get a chance to do this, and that, I don't know, looks like my health is going to allow me to come back to this, but maybe I'm wrong. If I fall apart next month, then please understand. It's not for lack of interest or lack of desire. But I'm so glad I was able to do this one today, this time. So I'll stop for now, and see if I can do maybe another one or two a little later today. And thank you so much for your patience. And there are more great scores to look at, and I hope you'll all be with me and add your comments and encouragement, and below this video and all the other ones. Thanks so much, everyone.